Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate, the Championship podcast. And as ever, I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Oli Mann from the Sheffield United Way. We've just been putting the worlds to right on Sheffield United off air, Oli. Looks like you might be joining us again next season.
Yeah, I'll have to be a guest and co-host next season when we get to talk about United again as part of the Championship. It's been a chastening experience, shall we say, but it's always fun to get to talk about the Championship. I think that's it's more fun anyway. That's where we want to be. Nobody wants to play Premier League. It's rubbish.
Very boring. Delighted to be joined by Oli Hargreaves from the Butter Pie podcast on Preston North End. Oli, thanks for joining us as always. Great to get you on. I suppose there's two contrasting feelings at Preston North End. One of which would be that you're in a fantastic position of seventh, in contrast with where expectations were before the start of the season. The other side of it would be that recent performances have been a long way short of the level, and there's probably a lot of disappointment in them from the fan base. I'm just wondering which side of the spectrum you're closer to at the moment.
It's hard to put my finger on it, really, Gab. I'm probably in the mixed reaction amongst fans because, albeit, we're in a fantastic position, and I'd have bit your hand off if you offered me at the start of the season because, we're probably one of the favourites to go down, and here we are in 7th place. But, the recent performances have been unacceptable. Like, watching that yesterday was embarrassing, to be fair. Like, no disarray to Borough, but they're not the same team as last year. I think Lowe's mentioned this. They've not got Chuba Akpom. They're not scoring 30 goals a season. Latte Laugh didn't really. I was watching like a Borough stream, and they were saying Latte Laugh's not won a header in like God knows how many games, and he's won about 4 in the first 30 minutes. So I think that probably sets a theme really about last night. That you got teams coming up against us who want it more. And, when you're a North End side who have a bottom 6 budget and, you're probably punching above your weight, you got to have the players to want to win and to have that strength in winning. And, I just don't feel like we have that at the moment. We had 2 good performances going into the break. And then obviously coming out of it, Robbie Brady's been sent off. I reckon if he didn't get sent off, would have gone on to win. But, that's the way football works, isn't it, Gab? So it's a very performance-based game. And, results decide how fans feel. And at the moment, it's probably a mixed package with the past 10 games because it's not been good enough to pick up the amount of points that have been there.
Sure. I mean, do you think that there's, based on how you've played, and Johnny Bullock, who's friend of the podcast and also on the Borough Breakdown, one of the things he tweeted, and as a knowing nod there from Ollie, he tweeted that North End are one of the worst teams Middlesbrough faced, which is certainly quite damning. Do you feel like there's the seeds of a slump at the moment?
It could go down that way, to be fair. Possibly could be a little bit of a slide. We've got a much better squad this season, but it still feels like we're lacking something. Like defensively, we are absolutely abysmal. Not tracking runners.
Which is what we were saying earlier in the season, though. Wally, was it?
No. I don't know what's gone on. They've just. Recent games, it's just been so poor, and you're just gifting goals to teams like Isaiah Jones. He just waltzed through our team, and second balls. I think Lowe mentioned it. What happened against Cardiff? We conceded, and then we conceded late on again, and I think he mentioned something about fear, and you could probably see that after the first goal went in, because I thought we didn't start off terribly, at 0-0, and then obviously once the first goal's in, you could actually probably see the fear setting in that going, we've just got beat against Cardiff really late on, and this is going to be another slump and a long one, and it's probably the mindset of the players. But to be fair, Lowe's not really got it right for quite a while, and obviously you're going to see fans saying it's been going on far too long and maybe he should have a bit of a reality check. But I don't think Lowe's anywhere near the sack or anything due to the position that we're in. But the performances haven't been good enough, and sometimes fans want action when performances aren't good enough, no matter what. But win, lose or draw, we'll still be here in our nice little mid-table home, where we'll remain for the next couple of years, Gab.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because obviously the fact that the defence is on the turn is something that sounds really quite concerning to me, because creativity is not there in spades in this squad. I was looking at some of the stats beforehand. I think it's only QPR and Rotherham who've actually created less XG. Obviously, Wednesday are doing something crazy in terms of missing all their chances.
You had to get that in, didn't you, Oli?
Got to have a dig where I can, because I don't get that much. I don't get any positives this year, so I've got one. But yeah, so it's weird to think that if the defence is really on the turn, how concerning could that be if you're not creating and the defence is starting to look shaky?
Well, I think we're set up quite negatively, to be fair. Lowe bangs on about having these wing backs, but realistically, we've got Kean Best out there at the moment. I think Liam Miller's picked up a bit of a knock, which is a massive, massive miss, because, when you're playing Liam Miller as a left wing back, it's not really a left wing back. You might as well just play him as a left forward. So you've got Lowe trying to play his system, and he doesn't want move away from this kind of system. But when you've got the personnel there who are probably more defensively minded, like Brad Potts, and Brad Potts is probably a bit, he gets up and down, but he's probably more defensively minded than what you'd want for someone who you need to create a lot of creativity, because realistically we've got centre midfielders. I know Brown was rested yesterday. You've got Whiteman and Ledson, and then you're sticking Mads Frokke Jensen, who, albeit didn't really get a sniff much yesterday. You're relying on 2 or 3 players in a team to try and create something for Osmajic up top. And realistically, Osmajic was chasing shadows for the first 45 minutes, and he went off with an injury. To be fair to Osmajic, he's done superbly since he's come in, because he's been fed off scraps, and he's scored 3 goals already. So, you mentioned there with the XG, we're not creating anything, but we're somehow, grabbing goals here, there, and everywhere when we can. So you could probably look at it as a positive that, if you do get a bit more creativity into this team, where could it take us? If you're going to put more chances on the plate of players like Osmajic, likely event is we're going to end up scoring more. But then you got to turn the half glass full type or empty, and is Lowe going to change his system? The creativity, is he going to not stick to it, and we're just going to continue down this negative path?
Do you know what? Listening to you talk about North End, Oli, over the last 3 times you've been on here this season, I think what it seems to me is that I don't necessarily buy the thought that North End don't have creative players, and I actually don't buy the thought that North End don't have sort of solid, hard-working players. But I think that the dynamic, the sort of sweet spot in terms of the blend of those players, I don't think you've quite found it yet, because we've talked about Miller going forward at left wing back. I think has produced some really lovely moments this season. Ben Whiteman, we've been fans of for quite a while, although clearly he struggled since coming back from injury. And then you've got Mads Frokke Jensen, who can certainly produce those moments. But it seems like that the balance of those sorts of players, I know Miller missed out last night, with your Ledsons, your McCanns, your Alan Brown types, it feels like you've just not quite been able to find the right concoction yet, as opposed to actually an issue with necessarily the individual players.
Yeah, I'd probably say that as well. And another thing is, we had big players out yesterday. Alan Brown's been the star of the show this season. He's been captain fantastic, and you can see the levels between him and, let's say, someone like Ledson, who does come fairly scrutinised by the fan base. But realistically, Ben Whiteman and Ryan Ledson together have never really worked. They've never really found that dynamic. Now, whether playing them more together is going to work, I don't know. But yeah, he's got to find that balance. And realistically, you know, we did have that at the start of the season when everyone was fit. You know, you're getting players dropping out now. It's coming around to January, and you know, is he able to find that dynamic with the players that we have remaining? Remains to be seen. At the moment, I don't believe so, because you know Ryan Letton and Ben Whiteman were really, really poor yesterday. We had you know Kean Best playing left wing back when he's been playing left centre half, like Andrew Hughes.
Are we expecting too much of Kean Best though, Ollie? Because we like when you did the podcast, the extended podcast with us on North End in the summer, we weren't even expecting. We weren't even talk. I don't think we even mentioned Kean Best. So this is a 17-year-old lad that's still finding his way. That through circumstance came into the season and had a great run of form in August. But you do want to sort of temper the expectation as much as possible, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's probably skyrocketed a bit more knowing that, you know, he got called up to the England 19s and did fantastically for them. I think he scored a goal, a set up free from left centre half. So, you know, in a back three. So that's not really going to temper the expectations of North End fans when, you know, you got a player who's doing that. So, yeah, he is a kid, and we do have to remember that. He got caught out yesterday, to be fair to him, for the first goal where he weren't tracking his man, Isaiah Jones. So I think we have to sit back and just, you know, he's not a world beater yet. He is a fantastic prospect. He's got a wonder of a left foot onto him. You know, the crosses and the way that he's out, and free kicks and set pieces is brilliant. And it's exactly what you need for someone potentially playing at left centre half. But, you know, when you're trying to throw him around in these different positions where, you know, you're wanting him to replace Liam Miller, who's very direct, with someone who's been playing left centre half in a back three for England, you know, he's probably getting him forced to do more than he's probably needing to do. And to be fair, as I mentioned, Miller's a huge miss.
How long's he out for, Ollie? Do you know?
There's been rumours that he's out until New Year. So it's a little bit of an ankle one. But, you know, Miller's our most direct player. And if you try to replace our most direct player and someone who runs at defenders with a 17-year-old lad who's been playing left centre half in a back three, you're probably stretching it a bit. So, you know, you've got to temper your expectations with what he's got at the moment. He was probably... He wasn't the best yesterday, but to be fair, he probably could have made 11 switches at half-time after yesterday's performance. So, got to see how it goes. Once he's able to get back into left centre half in a back three, I think we'll probably see the real Kean Best. And
over Andrew Hughes, though?
I mean... Really, I mean, I'm looking at it this way. Preston North End are a selling club. I know Kean Best has been brought up this way, and we're probably not going to reach the playoffs this season. Kean Best has got a year left on his contract after the end of this season because he signed a 2-year deal. Apparently, he's in talks for a longer one, but you know, I'm not sure how old Andrew Hughes is now, but he's getting to the
late
point
20s or something along those lines, I'd imagine.
Late 20s, early 30s. I'd have to double check. But if you've got a player that you can potentially build on, who you can sell on for like £10 million at the end of the season,
it's a life changer for the club, isn't it? That sort of money.
Of course it is. You know, it's another situation where you're able to. I've always said North End should do the Brentford model in the way that they buy players from foreign markets and sell them on like they did with Morpie, Ollie Watkins in the English league.
Morpie. Sounds like Oliver Twist in a bakery.
Morpie. So, yeah, we should always look down that. But if we've got one of our own, you know, especially like when we did with Ben Davis, who we probably should have sold on for a lot more, you've got to grasp that opportunity. And to be fair, leaving him out of the team, potentially even getting him out on loan, like we did with Ben Davis, that could be an option, potentially to a League One club. He's just got to play. you can't have a young prospect just sitting on the bench or potentially playing one-off games at left wing back if you want him to progress as a football player. So it depends. I mean, if Lowe's still thinking we've got a chance of playoffs, he's going to stick with Hughes. He's going to stick with the one he trusts. So for me, I'd get Best out on loan because he's probably not going to get the guaranteed game time that he's probably wanting and needs, actually, to be fair.
But then I think also
you're going to leave yourself very short.
Is the squad going to be in a place where you can loan him out? It's a difficult one, isn't it? Well, listen, Oli, thanks so much. Lovely stuff on the Butter Pie podcast. So thank you for joining us, and hopefully catch up with you once when maybe the form's in a slightly better place.
Hope so. Cheers for having me on, gents.
Cheers, Oli. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Delighted to bring in our next guest, which is Sam Ucko from WD18 Fans, the Watford channel. How are you, Sam?
I'm all good, mate. Sorry, I'm a bit red and my hair's a bit of a mess. I just got back from a run literally like 10 minutes ago. So thanks for having me on again. Always enjoyed it.
No, thanks for joining us out of your run. Hopefully you've had a moment to catch your breath. Just wondering how you're feeling as a Watford fan after that 3-2 victory over Norwich, coming from an early 2-goal deficit.
Yeah, it's amazing. You can never complain under the lights when your team turns it around from 2-0 down. It was a really, really weird game, actually, because I think what we saw was in one game, we saw the worst Watford have played this season and the best that Watford have played this season.
That you did give away some cheap goals early on, giving the ball away a little bit sloppy, wasn't it, at the start?
That first 20 minutes was absolutely horrific, genuinely. We couldn't string one pass together. No one knew what they were doing. No one knew where they were playing. Norwich were able to go 2-0 up and probably should have made it more, to be fair, and capitalised a bit more. They were pressing us really, really high up the pitch. We were still trying to play out the back and we just couldn't get out. And then something happened. I mean, something just clicked all of a sudden. And Ishmael Kone, who I know we've spoken about it in the past, Gab, but has been absolutely fantastic in the last few weeks. And yesterday, out of nowhere, scores an absolutely fantastic goal. Eden Hazard-esque from what he saw us. Hazard scored a similar goal at Vicarage Road a few years ago to that. It's just a fantastic goal. And then from that, I think Norwich really went into their shells. Really, really poor team. One of the poorest teams I've seen at Vicarage Road this season. I know they haven't had the best season and a lot of their fans are turning on Wagner, but I wasn't expecting them to be that bad. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but as soon as Watford made it 2-1, the writing was on the wall. It was so clear we were going to win the game. And that last 60 minutes or so was the best that Watford have played this season, genuinely.
Right. So you've had a few improved showings, haven't you, in 100%. Recent weeks? So that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. We were on the front foot. We were aggressive. We were getting the ball forward. We were taking shots. It was so good. It was brilliant to watch. The whole of I quite like to judge how exciting football is based on when you look across how many people are sat down versus how many people are stood up. And in that second half, I don't think anyone in my stand at Vicarage Road, the rookery behind the goal, was sat down for much of it because It was so on the front foot. It was so exciting to watch. And Valérien Ismaël's obviously, he's reinvented himself a bit this season. He can't really play how he did at Barnsley and West Brom because I don't think Watford have the tools for it. I also think he got found out a bit and he's realised that. And while we've seen Watford try and be a bit more compact in the last few weeks, that's now 6 games unbeaten out of 7. And yesterday was probably the most attacking display. The improvement from last season, last time we spoke, Ollie, was probably when Chris Wilder came into Watford. Yeah. And he was, I don't blame Chris Wilder, but what he picked out really was the lack of desire, lack of effort in this Watford team and really called it out. And while it's difficult, I think, to talk about what Valérien Ismaël's changed tactically, what he's brought to the table is he's completely rejuvenated the intangibles for Watford. We're seeing a team who care for the badge. We're seeing a team who are running constantly. Team who aren't giving up. That Watford team last season under Chris Wilder would have gone on to lose 5-0 if they were 2 down after 10 minutes. Yesterday, the character was fantastic and he's doing a great job, I think, Val.
I really want to ask you about Ishmael Kone, Sam, because his sort of jinking runs in from the right and popping up into those sort of those really dangerous areas and the link-up play that he's established with some of the left-sided wide players as well. I think that really excites me.
Yeah, wow. I think You asked me when we last spoke, must have been about a month ago, 6 weeks ago or so, Gab, that I said that he was sort of showing glimpses, but he was still a bit inconsistent.
Yeah.
But it's almost like I jinxed it, to be fair, because since then, those
Maybe
performances.
he was watching.
Yeah, maybe he was watching, but those performances now are just getting better and better and better every week. He's growing in confidence. He's the perfect, well-rounded midfielder. I wouldn't really say he's got really a specialist sort of area, be it a defensive midfielder or attacking midfielder or someone who's able to sit centrally, because I think what he is, he's just well-rounded, really good at everything in that central role. He's such a young player still as well. And if he carries on continuing like this, I genuinely think the sky's the limit for him, because he's hardworking, he's humble. Again, the intangibles, I think he's got that, but he's also improving his game every single week.
Should have been playing for us. He was linked last January. Obviously, he went to yourselves instead of coming to United, and obviously it's really working out for him. So it's great to hear that he's doing well, because he's one that we'd kept our eye on. One of the things that I wanted to pick up on Watford, particularly in regards to what you were saying before about having the fans and about having the intangibles. The home form this year is good. Like, I think it's the 4th best in the division.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's been a really strong fortress, Vicarage Road, let's say. What do you think changes when you're on the road? Why do you think you're not able to keep up that level of performance in your away games?
Believe me, that's the question on the edge of every Watford fan's lips at the moment. We've won 2 games away from home in 2023. That was Norwich on New Year's Day, or the 2nd of January, I think it was, and Swansea a few weeks ago as well. I think for a large period of that, it was confidence, to be honest with you, because the longer sort of something goes on for, the more difficult it gets. I think you have to take into the fact that last season there's mitigating factors. Players were wanting to leave. The attitude was really, really poor with both Slaven Bilic, Chris Wilder, different styles of play and everything, which didn't help anything. I think this season, aside from Leeds away and probably Leicester away the other day, we've pretty much been in every away game that we've played, which I think in itself is a huge improvement. But I still think there's that confidence element. I'm talking a lot about intangibles here. And I can't really put my finger on what it is tactically, because I'm not seeing a huge difference tactically between home and away. I just think purely it's a confidence thing. When the home fans are up, Watford seems to really, really struggle, I think, and get a bit, I don't know if overwhelmed is the right word, but we seem to get a bit swallowed up in the atmosphere, if that makes sense. And we seem to forget the basics of football pretty much, whether it being at Leeds away, for example, we were hoofing it long the whole time, giving the ball away so cheaply. But I think since Swansea away, I mean, we missed a great chance to win at Huddersfield. We should have won that game. We drew 0-0. Leicester, we deserved to lose it, but we were in that game for large portions. I think we are slowly improving away from home, and I think the results will come.
I think, Sam, it's probably difficult to envisage Watford getting into the top 6 this season. So how close do you think Valérien Ismaël is to building a side that could maybe challenge the following campaign?
Yeah, I think what a lot of Watford fans would have seen as success would be keep Valérien Ismaël, let him build this season, almost assess the squad this season and really crack on from next year. And that's when we can really judge him. We didn't get off to the best start. I think when Watford fans saw in the first international break club statement, Valérien Ismaël,
I remember that.
He sat and he signed a new contract. So I think that's a real signal that we are sticking by him. This season, I think we're probably going to finish roughly where we are now, mid-table, probably between 12th and 15th. I just don't think we have that consistency. But I think in terms of what we can do, I just think it's really establishing the way that we're playing with more bravery as well. I think we can be a bit braver and adding those additions next summer. For example, I think there are some areas that we need another centre-back. I don't think Ryan Porteous has been good enough.
I've loved his carrying runs though, the way he sort of goes into the final third, and he's a bit of a libero at times, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he absolutely thrived playing under Wilder last season because he was able to make those runs forward.
Yeah.
Problem is he's a bit rash, so he'll make those runs forward when he probably really shouldn't be, or gives the ball away. Last night he was at fault for the second goal because he gave the ball away cheaply. He was just rushing things. He's a bit erratic. He's almost like a player. He plays with so much passion and so much energy that he almost gets too excited sometimes on the ball and forgets
Would
the
it be
base.
better, like maybe in the middle of a back three, where you've got two centre backs, sort of either side of him, who are kind of keeping, holding the fort, if you like, and then a bit like a David Luiz type,
Yeah,
Championship David Luiz.
yeah, I think so. I think in all fairness, something that's really shone through is I think whoever's been playing next to him has always done well as well. Be it Wes Hoot has been fantastic, I think, this season. Sierralta, when he's played, has been really, really good as well. So the back three argument's interesting, but I think the back four at the moment, like I say with Ismail, it's about establishing that going into next season as well. Jake Livermore in the middle of the park has been absolutely brilliant. Genuinely been stunned with how good he's been a revelation in the middle of the park. But he's 34 years old. I think it's a bit of an unrealistic expectation to expect that he'll put in this level of performance across the rest of this season and next season. So it's just about finding that style of play and then recruiting well in the summer, led by Valerian Ismail.
So we talk about obviously another season of the Championship realistically next season. What are the finances like for Watford? Obviously, we look at lots of other clubs that are coming down, like I'm talking West Brom, for example, who once the parachute money runs out, they get themselves into a little bit of difficulty. Do you think the funds are still there in the summer to talk about this recruitment that you're looking for to Ishmael's style?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we just got rid of pretty much our entire recruitment team, which has saved a lot of money because all of them were on a lot of money. Nothing compared to what the players were on, but getting rid of Ben Manga has saved us, £1 million a year or something like that. But it's difficult because I think what we have is we were promised that the books would be balanced come next year, but we've just seen as well another loan has been taken out. I'm not one to claim I know too much about football finances, but that never looks like a good sign when loans being taken out and we've been promised that we'd break even. I think we've got some really exciting talents there, the likes of Yasser Spria, who we could potentially cash in on, Imran Loser as well, but also less so with Loser, but with Spria, we're going to have to keep him if we're going to carry on building the way we are under Ishmael. So there's certainly assets there to be sold, but I like to think the way that the Pozzos work, while they've lost their way a bit in the last few years, they're clever. And I don't think they'd let us lose our way in the way that perhaps, I don't know, West Brom have done. They've had problems with their money recently as well, or various other clubs as well who've slid through the league. So I think we'll be okay in that respect.
Yes, certainly. I want to ask you actually about Edo Kiembe, Sam, because it feels like he's another one that's maybe defying his doubters at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. That midfield three, I mean, we've spoken about all of them tonight so far. Livermore, Kone, Kiembe is the perfect balance of what you need. And while people say Imran Loser is arguably Watford's best player, I don't think it's coincidence that since he's dropped out of the team, Watford have gone unbeaten in 6 games out of the last 7 or something like that. Because, like I say, the first thing in a Valerian Ismail team that's important is the intangibles. I know I'm repeating myself a lot here, but Loser just hasn't bought that this season when he has played. And these three, Kiembe doesn't stop running and he's improving on the ball every week. Kone doesn't stop running. Young player improving every week. And Jake Livermore, who's really bringing experience and composure into the middle of the park. I just think that midfield three, the balance is perfect. It's complementing Kiembe. We're seeing the best of him in a Watford shirt. Probably been our best player across November as a whole. Got on the score sheet against Rotherham as well. So he's improving every single week and he's definitely one to watch.
Yeah, I think that's really really exciting. Certainly. Do you think you'll be able to do the business that you need to in January, and also will you be able to invest in players that will be part of Watford for next season and possibly beyond, as opposed to literally just the short term needs of this season? Because it does look a little bit like you're going to be comfortable in mid-table.
Yeah, if I'm going to compliment Ben Manga's time at Watford, it was last January he did invest in Ismail Kone, who's been great for us, Wes Hoot, who's been great for us, and Porteous, who's been hit and miss, but he has been here in the long term, and he will be here for the long term. Am I confident? It's a new look recruitment team. Pretty much it's going to be led by Valerian Ismail now, which is something we haven't ever seen in the Pozzo era. There are the funds there, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not sure how much that is. As far as I'm aware, Watford will also look at the loan market as well, perhaps get some players off the Premier League. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that does manifest itself. Transfer windows with Watford at the moment are hit and miss. So am I confident that we'll get the business done? I can tell you, to be honest with you.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Sam, that they are giving more power to the manager in terms of recruitment. And I sort of mixed feelings about that, because on the one hand, I really like the fact that they are maybe buying into a manager in a way that the club hasn't done previously, and I think that's really encouraging. On the other hand, I'm not necessarily a huge believer in managers taking on too much responsibility in terms of recruitment, because I think it can sometimes mean that they end up taking on too much and actually can't do their main job, which is coaching and managing the team as maybe effectively.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's almost like the head coach versus manager debate. If you're a manager, you're just managing the club. If you're a head coach, you're just managing the team. I quite like it, to be honest with you, because I think what we've had is, over the years, I look back to Marco Silva when we had him in 2017, Javi Gracia after the FA Cup final season in 2019. We recruited according to not what the manager needed. We signed players who didn't fit into the system. We signed Ismaila Sarr in a system that we didn't play wingers with. We played with 4 central midfielders after the FA Cup final. So what was the point in signing Sarr? I look at Marco Silva wanted a big hold-up striker. We didn't get one. So I quite like it, to be honest with you. I think it's a sign of change. I think it's a sign that they're going to be more flexible from this moment onwards. So, yeah, I do quite like it, to be honest with you. I see what you're saying about having too much control, perhaps, or just focusing on managing the team, but I think it's a good sign.
Okay, well, let's see how that goes. Sam, it's been great to get your views and keep up the great work with the WD18 fans.
Cheers, guys. Take care.
Cheers, mate.
Sam.
Delighted to bring in our final guest, Ant Northgraves from the wonderful Hull and Back podcast. Good evening, Ant.
Hi, Gabe. You all right?
Yeah, really well. Thanks so much for joining us. I was just so impressed with the football Hull played in Tuesday night, 4-1 win over Rotherham, having watched the extended highlights. And there's a few sort of moments that we could probably pick out, but I did want to start with that Jacob Greaves chance. It didn't actually end in a goal, but you've got your middle centre back. It looked like he was a middle centre back in a back three for a certain phase of play, a bit like a libero, if you like, for use that word again. He played a 1-2 with Scott Twine, and it was just beautiful build-up play. And I suppose it's symptomatic of or epitomises the confidence that Hull are playing with right now.
Yes. I mean, that would have been my favourite Hull City goal ever, just for the fact that it was Jacob Greaves and the fact that it was the centre-half that decided to do a 50-yard storming run and almost finish it. But no, it was... Jacob Greaves has done that when he's been given licence to, since he's been added to the side in League One, and that's what he's capable of. I think that's why he's so highly rated. I think that's why there's so many Premier League teams after him. But like you say, in this system that Roseniors plays or is deploying, it gives him that freedom to do it, especially when he's got the protection of a natural fullback in that left-hand side. And, we played Louis Coyle in left-back. Obviously, he's a right-footed player, but he slots in there perfectly fine. And he does that sort of inverted fullback role brilliantly. And it gives Greaves license to go and do that. Morton will sit deeper or Sarri will sit deeper. So we've got a good sort of tactical makeup where we're allowing players to sort of push on and try and hurt teams, but also covering them. So every player knows the role, who's meant to be covering, who can go, what time to do it, and everything like that. So we're not left exposed. So yeah, it's been, we're steadily seeing the style that Roseniors has been trying to get us to play for the last year, starting fully now to come to fruition. And I do think that another possibly 2 or 3 additions to the side, and we're probably just about where he wants us to be.
Sounds really encouraging. I think it's interesting you mentioned the fullbacks, because at half time it was against Swansea, where you're actually 2-0 down, having not played too badly, but they were clinical. And then there was an alteration where Cyrus Christie came on for Sean McLaughlin and moved to right back, and then let me just work this out in my head. Louis Coyle moved to left back. There we go. And then Jacob Greaves moved into central defence. And what I loved about that was you've got these inverted patterns where Cyrus Christie can actually invert into midfield, and Louis Coyle can kind of tuck into the back three, a little bit like the White and Zinchenko relationship at Arsenal. And it seems to be quite a common tactical trend in English football at the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I feel like it's something new that we've started doing, because I can't remember last season or even at the beginning half of this season seeing us deploy those kind of tactics before. So when we did it at Swansea, I feel like he did it as a tactical necessity because of the scoreline and as a way to get us back into the game. And then he's realised sort of do you know what? This could be something we could do going forwards, because Christie and Coyle both have. I mean, Coyle's having the season of his life. If you'd have said to me last season that Louis Coyle would be starting pretty much every game, I wouldn't have believed you, because we signed Ruben Vinagre at left back. We assumed would have been a really good fullback, and Christie was phenomenal.
But he couldn't have done the Coyle role, the role that we're seeing from Coyle, could he? That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Vinagre is just very suspect defensively, and we're still not seeing the threat that he's meant to give us in an offensive sense either. So I don't know if it's because he's just not played a lot of football for a long time, but he's definitely not the player we expected to get. And I think Roseniors is definitely attuned to that, and is probably working hard with him in training to get to that point. But Coyle's just, at the minute, him and Alfie Jones, Tyler Morton, Jacob Greaves, they're just every single week at least 7 or 8 out of 10. When you've got that kind of foundation in the squad every single week, and you've got those players that are just happy to put their sort of bodies on the line for the cause, that is the standard that Roseniors sets for us, and it's amazing to see so many players buy into it, and it's obviously coming to a point where it's really benefiting us, because we expected to be in the playoff question, but I don't think any of us expected to be actually in the top 6 approaching January. So we're in a position now where we're still not the finished article, but we're still in the top 6. So it's making you think, if we can get these 2 or 3 players that he wants, like I think there's Jezra and Raksaki has been mentioned. We've got probably a left back that's supposed to be coming in. He's got a clear vision and a clear plan. And as a Hull City fan at the minute, all you can do is just be so excited about the future, because off the pitch, on the pitch, everything's just attuned at the minute, and it's just great. The fans are back. We're winning games. It's fun game. We've not been like this in a few years. I'm enjoying it.
Oli, it must be a really exciting time to be a Hull fan right now. Where do you think they can go this season?
Yeah, it's weird because we have this conversation and it feels like we've talked about Hull 2 or 3 times, and every single time I've been the downer. I've been the, you guys get me excited, but I don't believe in what they're doing. You guys get me excited, but I've not seen it on the pitch. Well, you know what? We are starting to see it. We're really starting to see really good performances coming. Obviously, they're up to 6. And as Ant says, maybe they've not quite hit full flow yet, which means that they can actually really look to cement that position within the playoffs. Obviously, I don't think we can talk any higher than that. I don't think we can for most of the league. But I do think that they should be well set from here, that they can kick on and really keep themselves in the playoff picture. And obviously, then you've got a 1 in 4 chance of looking a little bit higher than that. I think for me, obviously, it's about keeping players fit, though, as well. I think you look at the creativity in Hull's team, and you look at Jaden Philogene and how much he's contributing. How important is he to what you're doing at the minute, and to you being able to sustain a push at the playoffs like this?
Crucial. He is, and when I think back to the Premier League days, he is genuinely probably the most exciting player I've seen in a City shirt in yonks. Like, I'm thinking back to the Giovannis and players like that were real game winners. He shouldn't be in this league, let alone at Hull City. What a talent, for the generational talent. I mean, he's obviously in a position now where he's really trusted by his manager. He's in a permanent surrounding where he's not going out on loan and thinking about where he's going to be next year. And he's obviously been given that the shackles have been taken off him, and he's just expressing himself to the point that I think it's 6 goals, 5 assists in 12 games. And last season, I think he only got 4 goals all season. So it's showing you the difference. I mean, that you can say the same for Delap. Like, he wasn't that great in terms of his statistics last season, probably not performance-wise either. But this system and having a manager, I think, that just genuinely believes in you and wants you to get better and better and better, which Rosenior tends to, comes across as, he's just getting better every week. And I just feel like that if you'd have put Philogene in any squad in this league, he's an ultimate game winner. And anyone that's got him in their side, no matter, even when we're 2-0 down at Swansea, you're thinking we can still come back into this because we've got him on the pitch. And it's been a long time. Probably the last player was Bowen, I would imagine, that was a player that could win us a game single-handedly and drag us through games. But Philogene's got the blessing that he's actually got a decent side around him too. So no, yeah, he's absolutely crucial. Brilliant player. I think the other players are loving playing alongside him. I think his experiences with the under-21s and his performances with them as well is helping him, and he's flying. He's an absolute joy to watch. I don't think he'll be with us for very long, So it's probably just the best to enjoy him while he's here because, yeah, he's what a player.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to also give a mention out to Jason Lockalow because it was a signing I was a little bit lukewarm on when it first happened, to be honest, because I think when he's been sort of in the lower leagues, he hasn't necessarily torn up trees. So, and I think he's since done quite well abroad, but I was still a little bit needed some convincing. But actually, he was one who made a real difference after coming on at the break at half time at Swansea, as well as Cyrus Christie. And it seemed like he took that sort of momentum into the Rotherham game.
Yes, I feel like Lakila is one that's going under the radar, not just for the whole league, but for our fan base as well. I think because Philogene just sets such a high bar in terms of what you can watch and enjoy from a player, that Lakila's sort of, he's very similar, but obviously not to the same level. So he's very good with his touch. He's very tricky. He's got a bit of flair about him, but he works hard as well. And that's that sort of paramount, absolute minimum that Rosenior installs into this side. If you're signing for us, you have to be able to work hard off the ball as much as you do on it. And he started off a little bit. I mean, he looked, when you saw him play, he looked promising. He showed flashes, but you didn't see it consistently, and then he kept getting injured. So I'm hoping that he gets a nice, good, consistent run of games, because it gives us, I think, having two wingers, natural wingers on either side, it gives us the squad natural balance, which we miss when we play someone like Traore out there because he's not a winger, or Slater. It helps the team, and I think it also helps give Philogene more space, because if we're playing someone like Traore who's not that pacey on the right hand side, teams can then double up on Philogene and it sort of nullifies him a little bit more. But if you've got Lakila on the other side who's just as dangerous, sides are having to spread the defence across the two of them. So they're both finding themselves in one-on-one situations with overlaps, and then finding people like Twine in the pocket, and it's allowing us to put the ball into the box a lot more often. So people like Lakila, to me, is absolutely crucial as well, because as Rosenior said in his post-match interview, he's really impressed with him in training. He's actually he's learned from his last time in this league that he knows, well, in this country, that it needs to be more physical. So he's put, I think he said, a lot of muscle on, because he wants to be able to be a bit more physical and hold his own on the ball. And yeah, he's another player that just seems to be getting more and more into the system and getting better and better every week. So I'm excited to see where he goes, because, like I say, he's at a point now where I think once he gets a goal, I think he'll be up and running. Hopefully, just as Scott Twine has, because he's been quite underwhelming in terms of a signing. Performance-wise, he's been okay, but obviously we're not getting the numbers. But him and Lakilo, I think, once they've clicked fully, I think them as a three behind the lap is going to be a danger for any side in the league.
Yeah, that sounds really promising. We've talked about Philogene and how he really is the star of the show at Hull at the moment, but I also want to touch on another loanee in Tyler Morton, who really seems to have bought into the ethos of the club. And I sort of feel like, because of the inverted fullback sort of dynamic that we've talked about earlier, with Cyrus Christie sometimes inverting into midfield, it feels like that's given Tyler Morton the leeway, I suppose, to push on and make some goal-scoring runs.
Yeah, I feel like because since Morton's come in, and we've said this a couple of times in our podcast, I've put a couple of tweets out like saying we need to talk about this guy. He is sort of like, to any football manager players out there, you'll know what I mean. He's a John Michael Seri regen. He is literally just, and I feel like playing alongside someone like Seri and training with him is going to help hone his skills, because he is, whereas Seri's more of a deep line playmaker, he'll sit there and he wants to conduct things. He wants to take the ball from the defence and get us going forwards.
Sure.
Morton's become more of a box to box, which I think has progressed more as he's been here. And I think that's more Rosenior starting to see his strengths a bit and starting to tweak the tactics. And yeah, he makes a lot more forward runs now. And I feel like if he, especially because he'd never scored before this week, and now he's got 3. He scored for the under-21s against Swansea and now against Rotherham. So he's found that goal-scoring touch. His confidence is high. I think he had 100% pass accuracy, which for a whole game of Championship football is crazy. But no, yeah, he's also become just an absolute key figure at the side. We're slowly but surely assembling this jigsaw puzzle that Rosenior's envisioned in his head, and I feel like somebody like Tyler Morton, who I would be very tempted to test the water with in Liverpool in January for a permanent, just to see just to see. Because he's absolutely fantastic, and we know at
You've
this
got
level.
the money now, Ant. I don't know if Morton's necessarily going to be part of Liverpool's plans. He might not be.
It's one of those, isn't it? Because he's young and he's English, he's probably going to cost quite a bit of bob. And I mean, we've got definitely an owner who's more willing to back, but I think in terms of transfers and wage expenditure at the minute, we're probably not in the realms of being able to pursue somebody, you know, that's multi-million at the minute. But
just
I do
need to
think
get promoted then.
We've just got to get promoted, obviously, and then we'll sign Morton and Andela. But no, it's a point where I think in January we've probably got to be a bit cutthroat now and offload a few players in order to get, you know, a fully assembled squad that he wants. Because I think the owner said in a recent interview that he wants 2 or 3 players. Well, Roseniors wants 2 or 3 players to come in. But that might change if we get rid of the likes of Durkan Sinek, and I think Doherty might be on his way because obviously he doesn't play at the minute, and I feel like he's worth more than being a squad player. So for me personally as a fan, I'd like to see him go somewhere else and play football. Yeah. And I think, and as harsh as it sounds, I think as a club we've come from a point now where a lot of the players from the previous regime and the last few years, we've come to a point now where they're just not at the point where we need them to be or where we want to go. So somebody like Doherty, who's going to give you 110% every single game, he's not quite the possession style player. He doesn't fit into Roseniors' system, and he's not as good as, you know, Tyler Morton or Regan Slater or John Michael Seri or Damatraore. He's just down in the pecking order. And it's as harsh as it is, those players may have to move on in order for us to sort of, you know, fill those slots with other squad players that are good enough to do what we want them to do and get to where we be. So yeah, January is going to be an interesting one for me because I feel like maybe 2, 3, 4 players might be going out. I'd like to see Harry Vaughan maybe get some loan minutes at somewhere else as well. But no, very interesting.
Where's he been on loan so far, Ant? Or has he been sort of part of the first team squad?
Harry Vaughan?
Yeah, Harry Vaughan.
He's been part of the squad. We've not loaned him out yet. We thought he'd have a much larger part to play this season, but I think he's had a couple of niggly injuries that have kept him out. And then obviously when you bring in other players like Twine, Philogene, and you've got Traore on there, Lakilo, you've got players that are unfortunately ahead of him. And, you know, he's still a young lad, so he played very well when he came on last season. I think he's a very good player. But I don't think he's going to get enough minutes here for him to sort of get to that potential that we need him to be at. So I would think personally that the best option for him would be to go to someone in League One maybe and get regular minutes every single week so that he comes back a more complete player.
Yeah, well, let's hope that's the case. Oli, talking of loans in at Hull, we've mentioned Philogene and Morton there, and the one thing that really stands out to me is they've both really bought into the fabric of the club, which you don't always necessarily see with loan players. Just how special is it when you see loan players buying in like that?
Oh, it makes such a difference. But I think also it's a sign of a really well-integrated group. I think that's really speaks to the strength of the dressing room. If you've got lone players who can come in and buy into what you're trying to do. We've seen it over the years with lots of teams who get promoted out of this division. They do so on the backs of really excellent loan signings who make the difference. You know, we saw it at United last year with Tommy Doyle and James McAtee, where they came into the squad. And when we were struggling or when we needed it, they just G'd everybody up. They added an extra little bit of quality. But I think there's a secondary sort of development to this as well. I think there's the positivity they bring this season and how much they're buying in and they're reflecting what is such a strong dressing room. But they'll also kick players on for next season. You know, we talked about Lakilo and we talked about Philogene. When Philogene is no longer at the club, let's say next season he's gone back, he's not at Hull anymore, then we'll expect to see players like Lakilo kicking on because we saw it at United where we were so reliant on Morgan Gibbs-White. The Illiman Njai was a little bit under the radar. He wasn't able to develop. He wasn't the main man. And as soon as you took Gibbs-White out of that team, you then saw Njai fly. And I'd expect to see something similar happening at Hull next year. If they're still in the Championship, I think those players who become a little bit more relied upon, people like Lakilo, will probably take that next step and really start to stand out and be up there in terms of the players that we've got in this division. But I think mainly, and I think I want to talk to you a little bit about this one, and is Liam Roseniors. I think we've got to talk about him and the job that he's doing at Hull at the moment, because obviously with these lone players buying in, he's cultivating that dressing room. He is making it so that it's so easy for them to slip in. And so they're buying into what he is doing. First of all, tell me how great he is. But secondly, Is there any worries that he might be looking elsewhere, that there might be teams maybe at the bottom of the Championship who might want a new manager in the next few weeks, would come looking at him? And do you think he'd be tempted by that kind of offer?
Yeah, you're right. He's absolutely amazing, and I think this. I think we were a match made in heaven in terms of the fact that we had a new owner come in that was ambitious, excited. He's got huge plans, wants to play entertaining football, all this kind of stuff, and then you had Roseniors, who is a young new coach getting into the game, wanting to learn his trade and show what he can do. It kind of made sense. You had worries at the beginning, obviously, when he was appointed, that it was a sentimental thing, and it might not work, because obviously in the Championship you tend to want a manager who's been there, done that, so that you can almost they know what to expect. Whereas with a new coach like Roseniors, it's a risk. But no, he's shown already, how he's adaptable to his tactics. His man management skills is brilliant. I think he's just sort of carried that almost dressing room best mate kind of thing that he had as a player over into a manager. So he still does it in an authoritative way, because he's obviously the gaffer, but he inspires players. He absolutely demands this teamwork ethic, like he says constantly in his post-match interviews, that players, it's not just the 11 on the pitch, it's the whole squad. Everyone's got to contribute over the season. Substitutes, everybody in the reserves have to be ready to come in and step in. He's just created this culture at the club now that's completely swapped from the kind of under the cosh thing we had for the last few years to something of hard work, endeavour, and positivity. And that's down to him. Like that is all him. And I think that, yes, you obviously as a fan, you're going to be thinking there's going to be Premier League teams looking. He plays a very attractive style of football. He's young, he's English. He sort of ticks all the boxes. So I can imagine there are a few teams that have got him on their shortlist. I'd like to think that he's too fresh a manager for a Premier League team to take that gamble. I feel like they'd want to see consistent year upon year sort of improvement, or at least the same level, before sort of taking that gamble. Because if you're a side in the bottom half and you're appointing a manager who's only been a full-time manager for 2-3 years and it doesn't go right, the fans are going to come for the board. So I think I'm hoping that might be a deterrent. I also hope that his sort of love and his connection to the club in the area might make him see through this, because I feel like he genuinely believes in this whole project that we're doing and would want to see out. But in saying that, I think if he had another club like a Brighton, who he's got a connection to, comes in, if De Zerbi gets poached by somebody like Man City, if Guardiola ends up going because they get relegated or something like that, there is a big worry there.
Yeah. But I don't think he's ready for the Brighton job. Like if you get the Brighton job, you've got to be better than De Zerbi. I don't think Roseniors is better than De Zerbi yet. He's got the potential to get there, but I think
who do you think Brighton are going to hire next, Gav? Like Klopp? Like I don't know.
Yeah, because the managerial appointment doesn't necessarily need to be better, as long as they adopt the similar style of player, which I think Roseniors does. I believe.
I can't see Brighton going for Roseniors if De Zerbi goes for a huge job tomorrow. I don't think that's where they would go. And I think
maybe a Burnley as well. Burnley could be a possibility, because obviously if they're trying to stick out with the company style that he's playing, Roseniors is obviously to a point where defensively he seems a little more sound. Obviously, Premier League would be a big jump, and does he have the ability to save him from relegation is another question. But I feel like these are all just pros, because these are very unlikely. So hopefully you'll just stay here.
I also think you've got to achieve something. Your current job, like he's done some fantastic things, don't get me wrong, and Hull are in a much better place for the work that he's done. At the same time, you want there's a mission that him and Hull City are on, and I feel like he's very committed to that mission.
Yeah, I do as well.
And I think that there's also a pace and a stage for moving on, and I don't think we're there yet. Oli, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I was just going to say he can come to United. Just as an idea, just throwing things out.
I want to come to you then, Ant, in terms of what Hull can achieve this season, because I think I'm right in saying that before the season you said 8th for Hull, is that right?
Yeah, somewhere in the top 10 would be good.
What's your feeling right now? Are you feeling more confident than you were at the start of the season?
I am, but I'm reluctant to change that prediction because I feel like that's still safe. I just think that when you take the whole season into account, since Roseniors took over last November, we've only lost 3 times at home, and 2 of those were Burnley last season, who won the league, Southampton this season in the 96th minute, and the first one was his very first home game against Reading, where he'd not really had time to.
And that was a complete smash and grab, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a last minute set piece. So it's one of those where I feel like that we just draw too many games is probably the only negative to it, but I feel like that's because he's not got that sort of finished article yet. Last season, he did what he absolutely needed to do, which was to turn us round from being an absolute defensive calamity to one of the best defenses in the league. And then this season, we needed to add more goals, which we've done. I think there's only 2 games this season where we've not scored. The only thing that's sort of curtailing us this year is individual errors. And you're going to get that because we've got a very young squad. So he's chosen to recruit and trust young players because they're enthusiastic, they want to learn, they want to improve. And I feel like that's sort of the embodiment of what Roseniors wants to do. But then with that, you get naivety, you get lack of experience. So Delap, for example, probably should have had a hat-trick against Rotherham. I mean, 2 of the goals ended up being from a chance where he should have scored, but the other person finished it off.
Was it him who scored the second goal, the one after the back heel from Philogene? Because I can't remember whether it was Twine or Delap who scored the absolute.
It was Twine. It was
Twine.
It was Twine.
I almost felt a bit sorry for Twine because it's like you've got Philogene who scored this amazing back heel, he nutmegged a defender and put it in the far corner, like comparable to Henry against Charlton in 04-05, and yet you've got Scott Twine where it was a good move, but he was literally at the back post, and it was just
yeah. But I feel like that in itself is also a positive because last season we didn't have players that followed up those chances.
Sure.
So, yeah. I mean, I said to who I go to the gate. I go with my uncle. I turned to him and I said, both those chances, Delap should have scored. So it was quite good that we had Morton following up on the first one, and then obviously Twine following up on the second one. But these are the kind of things that we're starting to see now. We're more progressive. We take more risks. Yes, we're going to have these opportunities where defensive errors, lapses of judgment, a poor pass. I mean, you're going to get that often when you're playing out from the back. And then, like we say, up front, sometimes decision making needs to be better. But you're willing to forgive that because, like you said, these are really young players. They're buying into what the club is, what they're trying to do, and every single game they just seem to be getting better. And when you ask me about where I think we're going to be, like I said, the fact that we're where we are right now, and we've got fine tuning to do in defence, fine tuning to do in the front line in terms of finishing off chances. And, positions in the squad that definitely need filling, to be in 6th place from all that only means that should be a nice solid foundation for us to be genuine playoff contenders for the rest of the season. So for me, I still wouldn't be heartbroken if we didn't finish in the top 6. But right now, I feel like we're in a position where we're definitely in contention for one of those, at least, from 4th down, I would imagine.
Yeah, bubbling nicely, that's for sure. And it's been great to have you on. Absolutely love the Hull and Back podcast that you and Nathaniel and the others do. So thanks so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Thanks to my co-host, Oli Mann, for joining us on this Championship podcast. As always, great to enjoy your company. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate Championship podcast. We'll see you again next week.
Cheers, guys.